18 hours on the Senate floor. An all-night fight. And when it was over, Senate Republicans had passed a bill that funds ICE and Border Patrol through the end of Trump's second term, $69.5 billion without a single Democratic vote. Democrats called it a rotten bill that delivers more money and more power to Trump and nothing to lower costs for working families. Republicans called it the most important border security legislation in a generation. Senator Warren pointed out that ICE agents have already killed 2 U.S. citizens. Senator Graham said sanctuary Democrats tried to block funding for law enforcement at the most dangerous moment in decades. And somewhere in the middle of all of this, America's most fundamental argument about what the border means, who gets to cross it, and who pays the price is being decided right now, in reconciliation votes at 4 a.m. In this video, we are going to walk through exactly what the Secure America Act does, why Republicans used the reconciliation process to pass it, and what that procedural maneuver means for future legislative battles. We will hear the full Republican case from Graham, Cotton, Cruz, and Grassley. We will give the full Democratic case from Schumer, Warren, and Booker. We will look at what this means for families directly affected by immigration enforcement. And we will ask the harder question, with border security now fully funded through the end of Trump's term, what happens to the Democratic Party's strategy going into the 2026 midterms? The timeline begins in the early hours of June 5. According to Itz and Schumer, Senate Democrats were still fighting back on the Senate floor as late as 3:15 in the morning, with Schumer pledging to continue holding Trump and Republicans accountable vote by vote. But by the time the sun rose over the Capitol, the bill had passed. At Lindsey Graham SC confirmed the final numbers, Senate Republicans approved $69.5 billion to fund Border Patrol and ICE through President Trump's entire second term. Graham stated the chamber was forced to use the reconciliation process because Democrats objected during the appropriations process to giving any money to border security. The Secure America Act, according to its Senate GOP, fully funds ICE and CBP through the end of President Trump's term, with every Democrat opposing the bill. In a pointed framing, its Senate GOP stated that a vote against the bill meant voting to defund the police and reopen borders. Senator Tom Cotton stated that Democrats tried to block funding for ICE and CBP and failed, describing it as superfunding border security for years to come. Senator Cruz added context specific to Texas, noting that the state border security reinforcement fund, which he had introduced legislation to create, is now open, allowing Texas to receive federal reimbursement for the $11 billion it spent on Operation Lone Star under the Biden administration. Senator Schumer's response was unambiguous and delivered through multiple posts and a video. He described the bill as a rotten bill that To understand the full stakes of what the Senate just did, we need to examine 3 levels of this story simultaneously: the immediate policy impact, the procedural significance, and the political calculation going into the 2026 midterms. The first question many viewers are asking is, what does reconciliation actually mean for how this law was passed, and why does that matter? The short answer is that reconciliation is a Senate procedural tool that allows budget-related legislation to pass with a simple majority rather than the 60 votes normally required to overcome a filibuster. By using reconciliation, Republicans bypassed the need for any Democratic support, making this entirely a party-line bill. The significance is that this sets a precedent: any administration with Senate control can fund its enforcement priorities for the duration of a presidential term without opposition cooperation. This is the most durable form of political victory, policy embedded in multi-year funding rather than subject to annual appropriations battles. A second pressing question is, what is the human impact of this funding on the millions of people, citizens and non-citizens, currently affected by immigration enforcement? On that front, Senator Warren's statement that ICE agents have already killed 2 U.S. citizens is a specific factual claim that, if verified, represents an extraordinary accountability failure. According to posts from @SunBooker, specific individuals including Emmanuel at Delaney Hall, New Jersey are being detained in facilities that elected officials are actively trying to close. The childcare cost argument Warren made is also concrete. If the average annual childcare cost in Wisconsin exceeds in-state tuition, the opportunity cost of funding IC over childcare is a direct material choice affecting millions of working families. What does using reconciliation mean, and why is it significant that all 100 Democrats were locked out? Reconciliation allows budget-related legislation to pass with a simple majority, bypassing the 60-vote filibuster threshold. By using it, Republicans locked Democrats out entirely and embedded enforcement funding for the full Trump term, making it immune to annual appropriations battles. This sets a precedent that any Senate majority can unilaterally fund executive enforcement priorities for years at a time. What is the actual human impact of $69.5 billion in ICE and CBP funding on families currently in the enforcement system? Senator Warren's claim that ICE agents have already killed 2 U.S. citizens is a specific factual assertion requiring verification. Senator Booker's advocacy for individuals in detention suggests enforcement is reaching U.S. citizen-adjacent communities. The childcare cost comparison frames a direct material trade-off affecting millions of working households. In border states Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, California, the Secure America Act's passage is felt most immediately. Senator Ted Cruz noted that Texas spent more than $11 billion on Operation Lone Star during the Biden administration, and that the state border security reinforcement fund is now open for federal reimbursement. For Texas border communities, this represents a direct financial resolution of a years-long dispute between state and federal governments over who bears the cost of enforcement. In sanctuary cities and blue state jurisdictions New York, New Jersey, California, Illinois, the funding has the opposite valence. Senator Booker's constituents in New Jersey are living in fear of enforcement. New Jersey Governor Sherrill has taken a public stand against enforcement operations. The California governor race just elevated Xavier Becerra to the general election, setting up a direct November confrontation between federal enforcement priorities and California's institutional resistance. In immigrant communities across the country, the bill's passage means the enforcement infrastructure they have been navigating will be financially guaranteed through at least 2029. Some community organizations have begun preparing for an intensified enforcement period. In the broader international community, the Secure America Act combined with the America's Counter-Cartel Coalition activity signals a comprehensive and well-funded U.S. enforcement posture that will shape migration decisions and diplomatic relationships across Latin America for years. The Republican case for the Secure America Act deserves to be heard in full, because it is not without merit. The strongest version of the argument goes like this: the United States is a sovereign nation, and the ability to control who enters the country and to enforce immigration law is a fundamental attribute of sovereignty. Democrats blocked DHS funding in the appropriations process, a maneuver that effectively defunded border enforcement and created record illegal crossings. Republicans, in this framing, were not choosing enforcement over families. They were choosing the rule of law over selective enforcement. At Senate, GOP highlighted the working families tax cuts, permanent expansion of the child tax credit to $2,200 per child as evidence the party is not indifferent to family economics. They also cited the Rural Health Transformation Program investing $80 million in Kansas healthcare providers. According to posts from @POTUS, Trump traveled to Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, to speak directly to farmers about American agriculture, a reminder that the Republican coalition includes millions of working families in rural America who view border security and economic nationalism as inextricably linked. Senator Graham's core argument is simple: you cannot be a sovereign nation without functioning law enforcement agencies capable of controlling illegal immigration. That argument resonates with a significant share of the American electorate regardless of party. Here is the number nobody is saying out loud: $69.5 billion. That is the cost of fully funding ICE and Border Patrol through the end of Trump's term. The entire annual budget of the IRS is roughly $13 billion. If you want to understand the administration's enforcement priorities not by what they say, but by what they fund, that ratio tells you everything. Tell us in the comments, does border security need this level of funding, or should that money go somewhere else? Hit like if you think this debate deserves more nuanced coverage, and subscribe. We cover every vote, every argument, and every real-world consequence.